Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And as you may have noticed, this isn't our usual shooting location. This is where I do the editing for the channel and computer gaming. If you were here for my first video, you will recognize this as the place where I benchmarked that system. You notice it's looking a little sparse, a little outdated, and I thought it was time to address that. We're going to be going with a modular solution to address a few different issues by going with products that I bought off of Ikea. I had the option to go with a package deal and opted to go with some custom that would look a little better to my taste. So I went with a laminate countertop, the Ekbacken, because it's nice and wide. It also looks like concrete instead of the just straight up white, straight black, or this weird green color, I believe was the other option. I looked at like 50 different laminate countertops. While not breaking the bank, some of the natural wood countertops, which I would have loved to have, was just a little too much for what I'm looking to do with this project. Then I also went with 2 of the Alex drawer systems to give me ample storage. And then finally, for structural integrity if needed, because this design is fluid and I'm going to be making adjustments on the fly, I bought 3 of the Adhesive static legs for about $4 a piece. The Alex's as well as the Ekbacken was $79 a piece. This modularity gives us some fluidity in how we deploy this. I have an idea of what I want, but also I'm still living in an apartment. I'm planning on moving into a house at some point in the near future. So I'm going to need to adjust this system later. So I didn't want to have to throw out the entire thing just to make these changes. And with this modularity, I'll be able to do that. So let's take a look at what I've got so far. As you saw, we've got the storage stands for DVD and optical media, which nobody uses anymore. So they ended up acting as bookshelves, and it just showed a lot of clutter, which drove my wife nuts, as well as myself. Also, with this bay window, I have a lot of unused space when I get rid of those storage units. So we're looking to expand into that, the Ekbacken. It's wide enough for that. Also with this desk, great desk, but it was a hand-me-down from my parents back when I was in college. It was never designed for computer use. You can see it's got great storage, but then it pushes the computer user off center. And when you have a large monitor like I do, you can't recenter that without it looking incredibly weird. You're banging your knees off this side of the desk trying to get in there. The armrests are hitting underneath this part. This is a little bit too high for comfortable ergonomic use because I couldn't get close enough. Also, I was banging my knees off of my computer, and I can hear what you guys are probably saying. Why didn't you just move the computer over? Then you won't be able to see into the clear panel that shows off the extra that I put into my computer to make it look nice. So I just dealt with it. But no longer. In this episode, we're going to clear this whole thing out. I'm going to show you how to put together the Alex and then go over how I address fitting the Ekbacken to the top to get the most storage and usable space. So let's get this all cleared out so we have some room to work and getting measurements for the countertop. Just so you guys know, when you move this, I would highly recommend if you have the Samsung THG90. Anyways, this is a removable part. Highly recommend you take that off before you move this because it will come off in your hands and have my hands right on the metal support. Alright, so we've gone through all our parts. We've nulled everything Some people would say that's not an old because I got stuff at 45 degrees, but whatever. We've got all our parts separated out into their unique categories. I've counted the parts, I've checked them against our instructions, and most of you, and I would do this too, skip this part. But then you might find that you are missing a part right at the end of a build, and I don't have time for that. So if you want to make sure that you're going to be able to get your project done, make sure that you actually take the time to count out your parts. It'll help you to identify all the slight variances, like we have these two parts right here. They are very slightly different size. At first I didn't even notice, so now I can pick that up and it'll make assembly that much faster. And if you're all confused about where something goes, you should look ahead a page or two, and that will help. Turns out it is this piece. I went forward a page and I noticed them using these. There we go. Then these have arrows on the racks to help you know which side goes where. See the arrows here? They're pointing that way. 6. 3 per. And you can tell there's actually 5 holes here. It's the smaller holes that I'm just setting these here so I can quickly go through them with my tool. I have a torque setting on this. I set it to 7. Without having to worry about them damaging or not going in all the way. If you have one of these DeWalt's, set it to 7. For this part, we need 4 of these. It's going to fit right in there. This is where the hammer comes in. And these you can hammer directly on because you're not going to see them. I also don't worry about getting them in all the way, because when this goes in here, they usually drill these a little bit deeper than what they need to be. I'm going to make this easier on myself. This is the heavier part. Make this so you can see it. And we're going to use 3 of these. They got a circular arrow and then a tiny arrow like that. Hopefully you can see that. It's that arrow that's pointing straight out, not the curved arrow. You want that basically pointing towards the board you're attaching, because that will keep the metal that's going to secure this in place out of the way. And on this one you can use a higher torque setting. Now put it back down to 7 right away. Bring this other one over. I'm going to do is bring this up because I don't want this to be bowing inwards and putting too much pressure. Now we are going to move that out of the way. This is the top. Similar construction as the back. We have 4 pegs and the rest are these locking 6 of these. These dowels turn this back down to 7. And when you're driving these, make sure you hold them nice and perpendicular to the work surface. Start it slow. Once it bites, and this will just help to keep everything as square as possible. Oh, right. And they actually told me to take these and put them on this, and that kind of helps mate it up properly. I got a little overzealous there. So we're going to take this like this. This slowly kind of put everything together here, using the heel of my hands to kind of just get everything tapped into place. So now the next step is going to be using more of these anchors. There's 6 of them in total. If you notice that you can't get one of these rotating fasteners, the ones that cinch the piece together in, and you've already put this part in there, you just got to back that part out a little bit. You can push that in and you should be able to tap the top plate or whatever plate you're attaching back in place. I'm going to go back up, turn this up again. Now we're going to add to the bottom. So we need 4 more of these dowels. It says these need to go here, here, and here. 1 hole in from the outer edge. Again, I'm not putting it all the way in because I like to have as much of the dowel going into the attaching piece as well. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 extra holes here. So line those up. So there's the lag bolts. That fits right in there. So there are 4 extra holes on the bottom here, and those are going to be for the feet later. Put them in the center 6 hole. Let's see how well this drives. You know what? Good job, Ikea. So I'm going to get that close, and I'm going to go down to the opposite side. This is actually pretty easy. I appreciate that. And why I'm doing this is basically just to make sure pressure is even across the part. And I go back and tighten these up after I get the corners done. You're going to hear a little bit of crunching. All right, so now we put the feet on. I have no problems doing this because I used to put together erector sets. If anybody knows about those can be difficult, surprisingly, for a child. Time to build the drawers. We're going to make 2 of the small and 3 of the large. Don't want to waste those parts. So turn this back down to 7. The instructions, it's upside down. Now we have these. It's saying that these grooves here are going to be the back. This deep groove here lines up with that for the bottom of the shelf. Now, if it goes in too easily, it means you've got the wrong side. You don't have to do these in parallel like I am. There's no Supermaning this. And if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to have a good time. You guys have a good time while you're building this stuff. And now we're going to use some of the smaller cinch fits. Again, put it so the arrow that points straight out from the circle is facing the part you're attaching, which is this base piece here. Flip these around. So now we're going to put in our bottoms, and these have little notches on either side, and one side is natural, one side is white. I guess you can choose which side you want to put up. I'm going to go white though, because it's actually a finished white, kind of a laminate, so it'll kind of protect the drawer a little bit. Now we'll slide down in. The little divots there go towards the front. Should slide right into place. And now we're going to take the backs, which are these short, small pieces. You're actually going to widen this out. And push this. There we go. Plastic lugs, push them in. Just going to start them with this, and then we're going to take the hammer again. If this is still loose, put it on top of your board piece, and this will let you really pinch down on it. There we go. So that is done. We make sure that there's no gaps. And these use just straight these lugs. Again, this groove is going to be the back. The long groove here lines up with this groove and goes towards the center. And another way to check it, these are on the outside. Alright, so now we are going to use, and we put in our bottoms. I slot one side, then I slot the other, and these will be attached the same way with the plastic lugs. With the hammer. See, there's holes here, and there's a track. You're going to center this track onto the metal track here. Slide it all the way in and then pull it out. And it should grab the metal track there. And then what you want to do is basically bring the metal track all the way out. You take this and from the inside of the drawer, I want this to be on 7. You're going to drive the screw in. And it might help to grab it from back here and pull that forward. You can also push the drawer back. Alright, so that one's done. And continue your way up. So far so good. Now we go to the small drawers, same process. It might be a little stiff. Make sure that rail is getting all the way up to the front. For those of you caring to know, these are considered letterbox drawers because of this little gap here. These blister packs are designed for exactly what I'm planning on doing with this. If you're not using this just as is, and you take these blister packs, you put them on the corners, and it'll help kind of keep it from being too slick for a tabletop surface to be placed on top. We've got these put together now. The other one took me like, I think 20-30 minutes. This is kind of where I want them. They might come forward a little bit because my wife's desk comes out about another half a foot from where this is. I'm going to bring up the countertop and we'll take a look at how long that is versus how long the space is. I've measured all this out, but I always go by looks more. So I went downstairs and unboxed the countertop, and it came in this box, which was pretty tightly fit around the countertop itself. That means that this is a perfect template to figure out where my desk is going to go, where the desktop is. I pretty much know that this is where I want my drawers to go, so that's pretty set. This comes out still a little bit too far into the room. You can see I've got like a 1 foot. If I take measurement, yeah, it's about 1 foot, 1 foot 1 inch. I want a 1 inch overhang, I think. And so now you can see I have a mark right here to cut. And so we're going to cut this. Oops. Oh-ho! There are spacers in here. What I thought was the edge is actually in by about 1 inch. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to cut this box in half now, so that way I have a second template if I need to, because this is okay if it's flimsy. All right, so basically we're going to put this, and that kind of impacts there, right? So we look at, let's roughly take a measurement this side. That's about 4.5, and then translate it over to here at 4.5, and since it's a 45, I also want 4.5 there. And then we're going to take our handy dandy piece of wood straight edge, try to make a 45 here, and cut it. I hit my hand just a little bit. All right, guys, so as you can see, I've remapped out the template a little bit. I have mock-ups of both my monitor, and I used our handy dandy straight edge as a mock-up for where my computer can go, and see if I'm comfortable with where they're showing up. This gives me the rough dimensions of the curved monitor, and then the rough dimensions of where my PC is. And at first I was thinking I'd kind of cant it out like this. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just kind of line it up with the edge. That is a good approximation. And I've already brought out my computer chair. I'm sitting in it right now, so I can kind of feel what the workspace is going to look like before I even make my final cuts. I'm feeling great about this. I noticed that the lips of my windows are catching just a little bit, but I think that the blisters that are included with the windows are going to be just thick enough to negate that. If that is still an issue, I can go back in and cut it. So let's go bring our template outside and cut the actual table to size. Let's go. Alright guys, so I've set out my table. I don't have any sawhorses yet. Looked at the patterning on both sides, And I think I'm going to make this side my front edge. So that means we're going to take my pattern, and lay it down on top. So now that we have our piece all nice and in place here, we are going to cut it. Make sure that you have your safety glasses. Make sure that your power source is safe. Check below where you're cutting to make sure that you aren't going to cut something underneath. Test your blade. You want to go slow. You want to walk this. Show me what it looks like. Notice I saw a little bit of sparking. That is super clean. Remember to double check, am I doing this wrong? Well, I almost did it wrong. Because if I was doing 4, I have to go this way. But I was planning on cutting towards you again. So that means I've got to go off of this side of the gate, not this. What we're going to do. Yep, 1 1/8 will get my kerf on the other side, and I'm happy with that. So let's go. Ah. Was this thing already running out of battery? Jesus. All right. I think this is an even better peel than any computer peel ever was, because so now that we've made our 2 cuts, I've inspected this area. I've noticed there's a little bit more chipping on this side than the other. I don't know if you noticed it. We'll see if in editing you get to hear the saw blade start to kind of come down in speed. The battery, which is kind of still really hot, basically, if you can see that, died. So after we finish the cuts here and clean up the top, there are some strips that have been included for just this purpose of cutting and making your own edge. Let's go back inside and we'll do that. All right, guys. So now that we're back up in the apartment, we can finish these off with the included strips. So the strips are designed to be a little bit wider than what they actually need to be. So you don't need to measure or anything like that. So we can get rid of this. We can get rid of this. We're going to basically use, you can use rubber cement, or I'm going to use E6000 because that's just what I happen to have on hand. It's industrial strength adhesive. So I've got an applicator, which is just a straw. I'm bleeding a little bit here. I don't know how, but I skinned myself. And then after you're done, you're going to go back in with a utility knife and basically just run it along the edges, and it'll cut it to a nice, clean, precise edge. You always want to clamp your material, but since I don't have clamps that would work well for this, what I'm going to do is use some blue Scotch tape and use that all the way along here to hold it in place. This needs to be about that length. You might want to think about cutting it from the inside. Fine with The nice thing about this cardboard is it compresses a little bit, so it'll act as a spring force. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So we've waited till morning to let this set. Gonna unstrap it now. A little bumpy, didn't even out as much as I would have liked, but again, this is on the back side, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Now we are going to take our blade and cut it to size. Do the same on the other side. So when we put this on the top, we need to have something to hold it in place. So you can either use brackets, which I do have in case this doesn't work, or you use these little blisters. So the blisters are going to go Alright, so now that everything is pretty much in place, we're going to lift this up and place it down. So now it's been a few days that I've had the desk set up, and as you can see, I've made a few tweaks. I added my power supply here, so now I can do builds here while having research up on the computer or listening to music, which adds a lot to this functionality. I'm loving the way this is set up. All the extra storage has been great. I highly recommend, if you are looking for a revamp of your computer setup, you go with something like this. The modularity just makes the tailored feel so easy and cheap. So again, what we used here today was the Alex drawer system, 2 of them, and the Ekbacken concrete finish laminate countertop. And that gave us this nice space. We tailored it to the bay window by cutting the corners. You might not need to do this, but it adds to the versatility of the system. When I end up moving, I'll still be able to use this, I believe, and if not, I just have to replace the top and we're good to go again. So thanks again for joining me on this. If you guys have any questions, post it right down in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell button so you can see when I come out with my new videos with a new build. We're going to be doing a shocking version of Operation. So keep your eyes out for that. Thanks again for joining me on Re-Engineer Tech.